It's an interesting one because I think it also shines a light on somewhat of the immaturity in the space. So this particular vulnerability was found, in a fork of Bitcoin, which is why, it was like 200 and some odd chains that were particularly affected. And the particular vulnerabilities, if I remember, because it was a couple of months ago, was the ability effectively to execute arbitrary code and effectively bring nodes offline, which could effectively lower the amount of operating nodes that we can potentially launch a 51% attack, or just cause a disruption in the network to lower the value of the particular asset.
This content is brought to you by VeChain, which is a leading enterprise-grade Layer 1 public blockchain spearheading a digital revolution from a sustainable, highly scalable smart contract platform. The VeChain blockchain has many unique features, which makes it an ideal choice for Web3 applications. VeChain is working with many great enterprises such as PwC, Givenchy, BMW, and Walmart China. Most recently, they partnered with the Boston Consulting Group to build a revolutionary decentralized application ecosystem. I'm a big believer in this project. I have been since 2018. I've been a VET token holder for years. And this blockchain is highly scalable, great with security and speed, and it has low energy consumption. If you'd like to learn more about VeChain, please visit vchain.org. Link will be in the description. Welcome to the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is David Schwed, who's the Chief Operating Officer at Halborn. Halborn is a blockchain security firm with full stack security solutions. David, great to have you back on.
Thanks for having me.
David, you have a plethora of experience in the crypto industry. You spent time at BNY Mellon, Galaxy Digital, and obviously doing some great things here at Halborn. But let's start with your background. Where are you from and what's your professional background?
Sure. My 20,000 foot overview, my elevator pitch, if you will, three arcs of my career. Started working in traditional finance and various infrastructure type roles, information security, risk management, audit. In 2008, I co-founded a telecommunications company, which I ran for about 10 years before we were acquired. And in 2018 is when I got professionally into crypto. On a personal level, I've been involved since around 2012. But after I exited my telecommunications company, that's when I took the role over at Galaxy Digital as their chief security officer. And I've been in crypto professionally since 2018.
And what was your first encounter with Bitcoin and what was your aha moment?
So for me, it wasn't this, I didn't look at it from an asset perspective. In 2012, obviously I knew of Bitcoin, or actually even prior to 2012. And then in 2012, I kind of took the leap more from a technological perspective, this concept of decentralized ledger from a resilient, like I'm looking at it purely from a technological risk management perspective. And just this concept of this decentralized ledger and immutability of transactions, that's really what kind of struck a chord with me. It wasn't so much the store of value. For me, Bitcoin at the time was just a use case of digital ledger technology. I wasn't looking at it as this is going to, become a $70,000, again, as of today, asset. So for me, again, it was more the technology that kind of struck a chord.
And you spent time at BNY Mellon as the global head of digital asset technology. Tell us about that. And were you around when they launched the crypto custody service?
No, so I had left a couple of months prior to that, but my organization was responsible for effectively building what was eventually launched. It was definitely an interesting time to be at the one of the world's largest, or if not the largest, custodian, and for them to kind of take the leap into digital asset custody was really, really exciting for me, because at this point, I've been working professionally in crypto for a while, and having that background in TradFi, I understand how things are built at banks, and they're really built to a completely different level than a lot of other organizations. So I was really, really excited, to be part of the oldest bank, and at least in the United States, and the largest custodial bank in the world, and building digital asset custody platform. So it was definitely a very exciting time.
For sure. So tell us about Halborn. Give us a history, the mission, and the services.
Sure. So Halborn is a cybersecurity company. We're focusing, on that convergence of Web 2 and Web 3. For any cybersecurity company to effectively protect, if you will, and that's what we are. We're protectors of people's assets and people's, money, right? Like we're we're providing a value in the sense that we're, protecting people's, financial viability and stability and projects also. But if you look at what an organization needs to do to protect a Web3 either project or organization, it's looking not just on the Web3 threats as far as the smart contract code, but it's also all of the other things that make up that particular project. So whether it's the web front end, whether it's the individual process of the developers and how the code makes it from the developer's, device into production. So we look holistically at all of the threats end to end.
Now, tell us about the clients, the type of clients you work with, whether they're blockchain projects or custodians or wallet services and so forth.
Sure. Like I say, we can be anywhere from a degen and a friend to, talking about digital assets with some of the world's largest banks. We work with Web3 native organizations. We also work with layer ones directly. And then we'll also work with large enterprises that will have a Web3 initiative. So whether it's a large gaming company, retail company, or, globally systemic important bank who's building custody solutions or thinking about tokenization or figuring out payment rails, or even organizations that are using digital ledger technology that maybe, it's not an asset or a token that's listed and you can't trade it on the mainnet, but they're figuring out how to use digital ledger technology as like the rails, if you will, or, how to create operational efficiencies on a traditional, financial product. So we'll work with, across the gamut from one end of the spectrum to the other.
So maybe you could take us behind the curtain a bit, as much as you can. What would the process be? So let's say I have a layer one blockchain. I come to Halborn and I said, I want to look for vulnerabilities and any type of security risk. What would be the next steps for the folks at Halborn?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it really depends on, if they're looking at us from an advisory consultancy perspective, there's a lot that we can do. A lot of times firms will come to us and say, we need you to do this one piece. And understandably so, our focus will be, myopically focused on that particular engagement. But our ideal working relationship with a partner, I like to call our clients partners, is, helping them understand the threats to their organization. And it might be a code review, like I said, or it might be understanding their DevOps process. At the end of the day, if we look at this from a risk management perspective or through the lens of risk management, we're trying to understand what are the different threats to that particular project or organization. What are the controls that they have in place? And can we ensure that those controls are effectively mitigated? So we like to take more of an advisory role up front to help them understand what those particular threats are, and then make certain recommendations of here we want to double click into this and do a pen test, and we want to double click here and do a review of the particular source code, or we want to really understand your DevOps process or your CI/CD. So that's, ideally what it is. But if you want to talk about process, individually, it's first getting a real core understanding of the code base and the dependencies, then developing a test plan in collaboration with that client to say, these are the things that we are particularly concerned with based on what the code is supposed to do. We'll identify what those, test cases are, work with the client, do that review of the code, test against those test cases, and then, internally, obviously having a very well established QA process, and then work with the client to identify any particular findings, work with them to suggest some remediations, and then we'll also confirm after the remediations have been in place that these identified vulnerabilities have been effectively addressed.
Now, there was recent reports from Halborn that you guys have discovered vulnerabilities in Dogecoin, Litecoin, and Zcash. What can you tell us there?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one because I think it also shines a light on somewhat of the immaturity in the space. So this particular vulnerability was found, in a fork of Bitcoin, which is why, it was like 200 and some odd chains that were particularly affected. And the particular vulnerabilities, if I remember, because it was a couple of months ago, was the ability effectively to execute arbitrary code and effectively bring nodes offline, which could effectively lower the amount of operating nodes that we can potentially launch a 51% attack, or just cause a disruption in the network to lower the value of the particular asset. And this particular vulnerability was found, like I said, in a fork. So what we did was, after that vulnerability was identified, we checked all of the forks and we said, okay, here's 200 and some odd projects that are now vulnerable. And when I say the immaturity in the space, is because a lot of code is forked from other particular projects, which is fine. And that's the beauty of open source. We can take an existing project, fork it, and make it our own. The problem comes to play when you don't have experienced developers or a well-established vulnerability management program, to go back and start, looking at the main, branches that you've been forked from to see what kind of changes and seeing if there's any vulnerabilities that are potentially been mitigated in the parent project. So, 200 and some odd chains were identified as, having this particular vulnerability.
Now, as someone who's investing in the crypto market and different tokens, right? This is important information I would want to know about because, of course, there's some sort of hack or whatever it may be that's going to impact the price of the asset that I'm holding. So, do you guys put out any type of tracker or list for coins and maybe a status, safe, not safe, possibly, anything along those lines?
No, we don't. We do some engagements for, some venture capital, private equity firms, or just investment management companies, that will engage us on a one-off or, thinking about either investing in a particular project or investing in a particular token, and they'll have us do due diligence. So we do work on a one-off basis, but there's nothing publicly that we publish on that.
Now, you did raise $90 million in a Series A funding. Tell us about that and who participated.
Yeah, sure. The lead investor was Summit Partners. There's a number of follow-ons as well. And, I think it just speaks to the understanding of where we're headed and that, the importance of Web3. If you look at that, again, it's not just the size of the round of, what we raise, but just the level of commitment as far as the ability to grow as an organization, in order to build projects. But it really just highlights the importance of Web3, digital assets, crypto, whatever you want to call it, is the future of our financial services.
Mm. Now, David, tough question for you because we've seen DeFi exploits over the years, different hacks and so on and so forth. And I know every iteration or Web 1.0, I should say 1.0 version of any technology, there's going to be bugs, there's going to be problems. And you guys obviously have a critical service where you're going to help mitigate a lot of this. But I would love to get your take on, are we making progress? Because sometimes I feel we're not, especially on DeFi. There's been so many exploits and drains and much more. What is your perspective on that?
We are and we aren't. We are. I'll talk about the good first and then the bad. The good is there's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of tools. There's a lot of people that are more knowledgeable in the space from a security perspective. A couple of years ago, there wasn't Web3 monitoring, security services that were, you were able to do an API call and check for anomalies and, behavior and, launching, simulations of transactions, before they actually execute. So we have a lot more tools at our disposal than we did years ago that a lot of organizations are using, and we are definitely mitigating risks. So I think we are making a tremendous progress in, like I said, knowledge and tools. I think the downside, though, is there's still a lot of projects that are launching with very minimal funding that are not paying attention to security. And I think on the flip side, the ecosystem itself, a lot of this is still, let me try to make a quick buck and, a meme coin, shit coin, altcoin, whatever you want to call it. And or just, hey, here's a project that launched and I don't really care about the project or the security thereof. And I'm going to try to flip it, after it goes up a couple of cents. And some of these projects without true security have, TVLs, even if it's 20, 30, 40, $50 million, that's a significant amount of money of people's assets. And as a threat actor, a 30, $40 million yield is still a lot. So you're seeing some sophisticated threat actors going after projects where it's like, the major league hackers are going after like, little league, when it comes to a sense of, security folks.
That's such an important note that you mentioned there. You got these coins that pop up overnight, especially the meme coins, right? Which have been going crazy lately. But folks think it's, oh, I'll just put my money in, but that could usually be rugged or have some sort of security issue, and they don't think about it. And it's so important for them to have that knowledge and education, kind of what you guys are doing. But it's, I don't know. I guess it is what it is in the market. I don't know how do you stop it, but maybe it's the awareness and the education that needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely awareness. And it's also, part of it, like I said, is the ecosystem's fault in and of itself. Like we see this, even in the traditional stock market. I remember when I used to take the train to the city every day, I would hear somebody, whisper that they got some information about a particular stock and, people are just buying it just based on a rumor. It's the same
Same thing.
concept. It's still this pump and dump in some respect. Like, that by the time the news makes it to me, I'm somebody's exit, in some respect. And it's really just kind of taking those same people and those same actors and just moving it into a new world. So I don't necessarily buy into crypto is creating these types of, environments. I think we're just shifting from one environment to another environment, and these people are always going to be grifters and find ways to, fleece people out of it. But I think, again, I think people need to really understand what they're investing in. If they're investing in, I don't know, whatever coin, and there's really no, utility behind that particular coin, it's a gamble, So
Yeah, absolutely. Well put. So on that note, we talked about looking for, you highlighted like forks having some issues because
mhm.
there's not enough developers backing it and it's not updated, quite often. Watch out for these meme coins. What are some other things you guys are seeing in the industry that maybe the average Joe and Jane who are looking to invest should be aware of?
Yeah, I think, I'm not just saying this because I come from a world of custody. I think custody is still somewhat of an issue. You know, at the end of the day, custody is foundational to anything that you do in crypto. And if you look at a project, 5 people, 10 people, you have to really stop and think about, somebody's holding these keys to the treasury, or there's some policy someplace that's, maybe that's protecting against an emergency withdrawal for a rug pull. And I don't think custody really has been truly solved. Like there's definitely solutions out there, but as far as the implementation of those solutions, where are those recovery packages? If you're talking about, MPC, I think there's still a lot of nuance that needs to be figured out when it comes to custody and wallets. So I think that's an area that I would be particularly interested if I'm talking to a particular project, you know, who owns the keys to that project or to upgrade a proxy contract, to understand that piece, and I think, not to shine a light on, the industry a little bit more, but, LinkedIn is a great resource to understand just how well versed a project is. I
Yeah.
go on LinkedIn, I click on a project and I see how many people are working at that project. I look at the backgrounds of the developers. I see if there's any security folks that are on there. It's scary to me, a lot of projects that I click into and I see absolutely no security folks. It's just developers and marketers and biz dev people. So again, developers are not security people. Security people are not developers. I would not want to hire a security person to be my developer because they don't have that same mindset. Same respect goes to developers, being security folks. So, that's use LinkedIn. Just look at the team and make an assessment of whether or not this is something that I want to, put a particular, material amount of assets into.
Yeah, great point. And I've often told people to do that too, to have that, is there a digital trail? What was the background of these people? What's going on, right? Can you readily identify them and all these things? So LinkedIn is certainly a great resource. Um, and another hard question for you. I don't know what iteration we're in right now for wallets and these things and custody. And we have the ETFs that have been launched, right? And they're with the Wall Street firms that have established custody insurance, a lot of security layers, and so forth. Do you see maybe in 5 years a lot of these vulnerabilities and issues will be put to bed and will be maybe at a higher standard?
Um, that's a good question. I think the answer comes down to, again, what the industry is looking for. Like there's different tiers. If you look at, let's just take the ETFs, for example. So if you look at, it's been basically Fidelity, Gemini, and Coinbase. And if you look at those organizations, they are fintech organizations that, offer custodial services. And if you look traditionally at, and again, this is not a knock on any of the qualified custodians that are out there that are in the space today, but there is a world of a difference between bank level security and security from a fintech organization that's, just actively building in the space.
Hmm.
Especially a lot of these organizations are privately held. So, we don't really understand truly from a financial viability perspective, like how safe is that particular organization. When you're talking about a bank, you have, you know, federal examiners in there. If they're publicly traded, you have SEC, you have SOX 404. There's a different level of oversight for a publicly traded organization and a true bank versus a trust company. There is a difference between a bank and a trust company. So I think, as we're starting to see the globally systemic important banks starting to offer custody, I think we're going to see a lot more capital come into, the market. Like if we look at today, people like to look at the market cap of crypto as what's the value of Bitcoin, what's the value of ETH, what's the value of Sol, or whatever it is. But I challenge everybody to kind of look at it from a different perspective. Look at it from a tokenization perspective and look at it from the debt market and the equity market. And we have over $200 trillion of value there. So when we start getting into tokenization of bonds and tokenization of equities, we're going to start to see the requirement of truly custodying hundreds of trillions of dollars. And I think we're going to need a different layer and a different, just working environment to kind of secure those assets. So I do think things are going to change for the better in the next couple of years. Again, this isn't a knock on any of the existing players in the market, but I do think that there's going to be an elevated sense of security for a lot of custodians.
For sure. Now, with the Bitcoin ETF launch, and you have different custodians participating, I know Coinbase is a big one, custodying a lot of the ETFs. Have you seen more demand for your services, and are you working? You probably can't name drop, but are you working with any of the ETF issuers or custodians?
Yeah, without getting into specifics, we have done some work in that area. I don't want to specifically go into it, but we did, assist in some respect in, figuring out what a custodial solution or what the custody strategy should look like. As far as demand of our services, we are seeing an uptick in the banking sector, looking for our services. Interestingly, a lot of it's on the advisory side, which I like because it's like start earlier, engaging in security experts. I like to bucket our services into advisory. How can we do blank? And assurance services. Can you please make sure we did blank correctly? And you're able to fix things quicker and you're able to build things better if we start earlier. So a lot of the major banks are engaging with us earlier to help think through things. How can we build things properly? How can we start thinking about integrating here and doing things properly, as opposed to let me go build it and then ask you afterwards that I do it correctly. So definitely an uptick, I'd say over the past 12 to 18 months in those types of services from some of the, like I said, the larger, enterprise organizations.
Oh, awesome. And what's on your 2024 roadmap? What do you guys have in store?
Yeah, just more of the same. Helping protect the ecosystem. We're launching some internal tools for our clients, which we're really excited about. I would encourage anybody that's interested, reach out. We're happy to give demos. Security Solution Center for our clients. And that's really it. It's really just protecting our clients and just learning about figuring out what areas of crypto particularly interest our engineers that we think is going to be the next big thing, so that way we can kind of dive into it, because there's a lot, right? Like we're not going to provide services for everything that's Web3. We want to figure out what we're experts in and what we think the market is going to be looking for in 2024. So that's what we've been focusing on.
For sure. Jumping back to the Bitcoin ETFs, I want to get your take on, as someone who's been here for a long time and worked in many crypto firms throughout the history of the market. What are your thoughts on the Bitcoin ETF launch and the inflows and how things have been going?
Yeah, I've been, really happy. I think it legitimizes it in some respect for, a large segment of the market, for people that thinking that this is, made up, bottle caps or, the, beanie babies of 2020s, that, the fact that we have some big names in the market offering, actual ETFs, and, these create investment vehicles for people that don't want to get into the messiness of holding crypto itself. And now they can just buy an ETF and have somebody else worry about the custody of the asset. So, definitely been very, very happy in the launch, in the inflows of capital into it, and just the sheer number of, ETF providers. And then obviously, hopefully coming soon this year would be the ETH ETFs as well.
Yeah, and there's some issues with the ETH ETF. I know there's and that hasn't been confirmed by the SEC, but it seems they're wanting to classify Ethereum as a security, but the CFTC sees it as a commodity. Yet the SEC had given the green light for the futures. It's just a mess. And maybe the next question I have for you is, what do you think about crypto regulations? Could we see something this year or next year to give clarity to the entire industry?
I think we're heading towards clarity, whether it comes directly from the SEC, whether it comes from litigation, Ripple SEC case, whether it comes from Congress. I think we're going to get there, because I think at the end of the day, I think there's central banks all over the world that are, looking at CBDCs and, in many respects, especially in Singapore, we're doing repo agreements on mainnet. So I think the US is very cognizant that they have to do something. Now, the other side of it is I think we as a community have to stop shouting at the SEC and stop shouting at Congress and stop demanding things. Their role is to protect us from a safety and soundness perspective. And, with all of these rug pulls and with all of these projects that are getting launched without security, there is a little bit of truth to them saying like, let's pump the brakes and think things through a little bit more clearly, and let's, set up regulation. So I think, us as an industry have to be a little bit more understanding and stop demanding answers and stop demanding things. But I am very hopeful from, conversations that I've had, closed door, whether it's with certain regulators, that, there will be, they're asking the right questions. They're not, pushing and way and saying, this isn't something that we're concerned with. A lot of the, and my personal involvement has been, from an educational and teaching perspective. So I am hopeful, and I think we're going to get there.
Yeah, for sure. What are your thoughts on NFTs? Do you see that market coming back? Certainly, I see value in the utility of NFTs in real world application, right? Whether it be movies, tickets, real estate, whatever it may be. But collectibles, I'm not so much a big fan of collectibles. I understand there's a market for it. But what are your thoughts on the evolution of NFTs to be more utility based?
Yeah, listen, I think there is a world for collectibles, just like baseball cards or, any particular piece of art. I think once people realize that that truly is what differentiates it and makes the value, I think then, we'll kind of go back to, I guess, just like baseball cards or, pieces of art, that there will be certain collectibles via NFT that have value to it. But I am really, really excited about the utility aspect of it. Just, thinking through like on a personal level, airline tickets, the ability to create a secondary market where, I really want to go to Florida this weekend and I'll pay a little bit more to buy somebody, or I want a particular seat and there's only middle seats left, but I really need to take this flight and I can buy a seat from somebody and they can make an extra money. Like, it's creating a new market where people can benefit from this. The airlines can benefit from it. You can create, some residuals that go back to the airline. So I think it's really cool if you start thinking about the ability for, people to sell their assets and, to be able to have this programmable code behind it. So I am excited about NFTs. And again, it comes in waves. It takes, a lot of projects to start up and fail. Like, I know there's a lot of, negativity around, the Starbucks, closing, their NFT platform. But listen, it takes projects to launch, fail, for us to understand why something failed for the next project to launch. So I don't think we should look negatively on projects that fail. Look at that as a learning lesson as to why it failed. It might be too early. It might not have been the project itself. So I'm definitely excited about it.
Yeah, great point you brought up. I personally think it was a combination. I think one, being too early is the main item. I know there was some regulatory thing because the SEC has gone after NFT issuers like Stoner Cats and so forth. But I think, to your point, too early. The consumer maybe not too ready for that yet, but they will be eventually.
Yeah, I mean, just like on a personal level, Ticketmaster launched some NFTs, and I went to a baseball game with my son, and he got all excited and showed me, he goes, "Hey, we get an NFT after the game." I said, "Awesome, I'll send it to your wallet." I go in Ticketmaster, and I can't send it. So I'm like, so then, at the end of the day, I have a JPEG sitting in my Ticketmaster account. I can't send it anywhere. I can't do anything with it. So what was the point of launching that if you can't do anything with it? I couldn't send it to my son after the game. He can't show his friends at school on his, his wallet. So it was just like a publicity play, a PR, to say that they're doing something with NFTs. So, I do think in many respects there's a quick launch to market to grab that PR, but then when people look at what the project is, they kind of roll their eyes on it a little bit. So I think we're early in some respects, to your point.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I thought of AI, and I remember there's an AI question I wanted to ask you. Um, do you see any rising threats to blockchains and different crypto wallets and services due to AI?
Yes, but yes and no. We have to look. So there's a couple of different answers for that. So I'll give you like not different answers, but like different framing of the answer. So the first one is, I think one of the more unrecognized threats of AI is the over reliance on AI to do certain things. So I see a lot of projects today having junior level developers utilizing AI to code. And, understanding where AI and the LLMs are learning from, they're learning from information that it's being fed. And there's a lot of vulnerable code that's out there. So if you have a junior level developer that's, please program me a smart contract that does blank, they get the code and they launch and it works. They're not going to understand that maybe there's, the LLM is using 2-year-old code as a part of its LLM, that it just now is giving you code with certain vulnerabilities in it. And also the ability to ask an LLM to now audit code, it's the same thing too. We're at the tip of the spear. So the LLM only knows what has been fed up to a certain date or what has been fed up to. It is not up to date as far as, the particular, vulnerabilities that were discovered as of the last, few weeks or few months. So I think over reliance on AI from security, over reliance on AI from a developer standpoint is definitely a concern. The other aspect of it too is to understand from a threat actor perspective, it is a tool that threat actors use as well, because you can automate, reviewing certain codes, certain vulnerabilities, looking for certain things, creating some, spear phishing campaigns. So it is something that, we are concerned with from the cyber side, is a tool that the threat actors are also using in, themselves.
Mm. Yeah, and we'll have to wait and see how things progress, because AI is going to become more sophisticated, and I know blockchains are being used in a way to combat like deepfakes and fake media and so forth. But we'll see what the threats may be as things progress. Um, what's your outlook for the crypto market as Bitcoin 70 back over 70K this to today? It seems we're still maybe midway in the bull market. What's your outlook? You think it's the same 4-year cycles? We maybe blow off top in 2025?
I think so. Listen, at a certain point, it has to stabilize, right? This isn't, we're not going to all of a sudden create a $30 trillion market in BTC. So I think, like, investing in this from a return perspective, yes, but just like gold will increase over the years, but it's not 100xing over 2 years. So it will reach a point in which it definitely does stabilize. I don't think we're there yet, so I still think there's a lot of upside potential in Bitcoin. And then when you look at all of the others like ETH and Solana and whoever else, there's a utility to that asset. So there's more of an argument that the assets are worth something because it's being used for something. So I'm definitely still bullish on the overall market. So yeah,
All right, I got some wrap-up questions here for you. First, if
let's
you could
go.
create your own metaverse, what would the theme be?
My own metaverse, I'm a big EDM club guy, so I'd probably create, like, some of the old clubs I used to go back to back in the day in New York City. So I'd probably recreate those.
Nice. Rapid fire questions. Favorite food?
Sure. Favorite food would be actually key lime pie.
Favorite musician or band?
I'm gonna go back to EDM, so I'm gonna go with my two favorite DJs, Sasha and Bigly.
Favorite movie?
Definitely would have to be American Psycho.
Favorite book?
American Psycho.
And when you're not working at Halborn, what are you doing for fun?
Hanging out with my kids, going to comedy shows, going to baseball games, sports games. So I love hanging out with my kids and my wife too, obviously.
Awesome. David, pleasure chatting with you. Looking forward to the future updates around Halborn. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.